Welcome to Licensed Poetics, a podcast where we talk about creative storytelling. I'm your host, Achim.
And I'm your host, Fan Ling.
Today we have a stellar guest, Yurui Z. Woo!
Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to do a shout out to the lovely people who have reached out to us and messaged us. Thank you so much. And it really means the world to us. And it makes us feel like we're really building this community of people who love books and love creative storytelling. If you'd like to reach out to us, please do. You can find us on Instagram at Licensed Poetics, or you can leave a comment under this episode, or you can email us at licensedpoetics@gmail.com. Okay.
Yeah, honestly, keep them coming.
Yes.
Yurui is a 17-year-old high school grad from James Roos. Is it Roos?
It's a famous school. Have you heard of it?
I've never heard.
It's an extremely selective school.
Oh, really? Yeah.
The best school in New South Wales.
Yurui is a 17-year-old high school grad from James Roos Agricultural High School who is taking a gap year before starting college in the US. Yurui is currently working for a startup in stealth mode and has previously worked in strategy and growth in Next Chapter, a social club for the most impressive founders, investors, and operators around the world. Yurui was also the youngest ever StarMate Fellow to have undergone the student fellowship while he was in high school. Yurui has been consistently sharing his learnings on his personal website and also on LinkedIn for the past year, reaching hundreds of thousands of readers. Damn.
Thank you. It's it feels very, very weird to hear it, read out to me. But
I can't wait to chat to you more in
very
this
excited
episode.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, let's do our recent reading updates. So the book that I'm going to talk about today, it's... Finally, have you read it?
What's the title?
It's The Left Hand of Darkness.
Oh,
by
you're
Ursula
talking about that
Guin.
one.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Oh, finally excited. Finally
I am
hyped up.
so excited because Katie, one of our alumni, a Licensed Poetics alumni, highly recommends this book to anyone and everyone. And honestly, it's a bit sacrilegious that I still haven't read it, but
You have not.
I have not read it, and that's why I'm so keen to hear you talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin.
So basically, this story talks about Ice Age, Winter World,
Oh.
where the people there, the species is called Ganthian. Like the nation is called Ganthan, and the people is called Ganthanian. And they live in this society, which is not bisexual, but ambisexual. I'm going to be I'm going to be more clearer in a second. So what it means is that they don't have a constant sexual drive, don't have a constant sexual desire. They go into celibate for most of the year, and when they get out of it, they can start mating. But there's no telling that which one of the partners will become more male or become more female.
So is it like a sexual hibernation for most of the year?
Correct.
I see.
Yeah. And then when you mate, your genitals just change accordingly. Depends on the vibe, I guess.
Oh, like depending on the personality or the situation?
Just the situation.
Oh.
It varies from time to time.
Very interesting.
So like the society, it's as a whole, it's ambisexual, like ambidextrous. And the people there, they are gender fluid, mostly. And this just like immediate biological cultural shock to our protagonist, which is called Genli I. So he is a ambassador, he is an envoy from our earthly planet, trying to incorporate the alien civilization into an alliance. And then he is just really lost and confused by this unstable structure because there is no certainty of bisexuality in that society. As a result, so the people there, they don't really have like a fast, like a rapid progression in terms of their civilization, in terms of their technology. And then like they drive really slowly.
Why? Why is that a result of?
The theory that is because there's no masculinity or femininity. So there's no gender division. And also there's less competitiveness. So like people appear to be less aggressive.
Okay, and because of the absence of that difference, the society actually moves slowly.
Slowly, yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting theory.
I'm going to elaborate
Yeah.
why that is. So first of all, there's a lack of insatiable like sensual or sexual desire, which is something primitive. And also, it is interesting to mention that Ursula, she wrote in the book that the opposite to civilization isn't primitive, but war. And I'm going to take it a step further to say that the opposite of civilization is barbarity. Finally would get what I mean.
Okay, so barbarity, primitiveness, and civilization. So you're saying the opposite of civilization isn't primitiveness, but it's barbaric war kind of thing? Barbaric conflict?
There are some similarities between primitiveness and barbarity. And then what I mean in this context is that like the sexual impulse, it comes from your like primitive
needs.
Cognition, yes.
Yeah.
And then it can drive the action of war, which is a more evident form of barbarity.
Okay, I think I see what you mean now. And yeah, that connection, that sexual urge connection with, I guess, the instinct for war, like the connection between those, that's very interesting. It's discussed a little bit in 1984 as well by George Orwell.
Yes. And then just really like this parallel, this causal effect. At the end of the day, like there hasn't been a war in this nation just because they can't establish this coordinated aggression. This is also a trend that I recognized because I'm a huge sci-fi reader. I believe that it is our best wishes that we wish that in the future, in the sort of more utopian world, the futuristic world is going to be more queer. I think that's becoming like a recognized trend.
Yeah, and it's like that last book you talked about in our last episode.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then have I talked about why? Like why the futuristic world is more queer?
The last episode you mentioned because humanity cured AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases.
Yeah. Okay. I think I have an underlying theory. I think it is because like in that world, in that utopian world, I guess reproduction is not your priority anymore. Like even if like not in a sci-fi setting, like if we look at the past, like if we look at the Roman empires, the Greek people, they're also primitively queer.
Why is that though? They did not have the reproductive technology.
No, but they have the most advanced culture. They have most advanced technology of that time.
Okay, well, I didn't know much about that.
Okay. I'm pretty sure Yurui knows much about this, so I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this. Like especially the Roman Empire. Like they, how often do you think about the Roman?
What
is
your Roman Empire?
I studied Latin in high school, so I
really
I did it for around 6 years.
What did you study in high school?
Latin.
Okay.
The language of the Romans. Oh no, it was never a focal point. It was never something that stood out. That sort of, I guess, sexuality point. I think we studied more of the culture in terms of like operations in a sense.
Yeah.
What I mean by that
like
is
operations. We can see that entrepreneur lingo coming in. That was a great moment.
But what I mean by that is sort of the political hierarchy, for example. We didn't dive so much into the sexuality part of that.
What a shame.
Yeah, I agree there.
It was high school, so
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the guest is 17 today, so maybe we should rein in a little bit of. Not that we're going to, but maybe we should.
You're graduated. Come on.
I'm legally a minor.
Yeah, he's a minor.
Yes,
oh my god, we're gonna get sued. Oh my god.
So what can we talk about? Like,
no, I was kidding. We can talk about anything. I don't give a fuck.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm not very deep in that sort of space. I'm
no, that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
That's okay. We're gonna get that. I guess this is like a really fascinating read to put that into context of like Mardi Gras. I was like reading.
What a great read for Mardi Gras.
I was in the middle of this book when I went to Mardi Gras, and then I just thought that even if just one night or one day, like people can just disregard any like conventional like hierarchy in this like binary sexuality society, and it's really like liberating and really like hoping.
I also think that would be a fantastic thing, even for just one day.
Yeah. is something I enjoy a lot. It's something I wanted to read for a long time, but I've now I'm really digging it, and then hopefully I can get finished soon, and then I'll report back.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I would love to read that as well.
Yeah.
I'm now even more intrigued after hearing your thoughts. Okay, I'll do my reading update next. The book I'm going to talk about today is actually also a recommendation from Katie. The book I'm going to talk about today is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I think many of our listeners will have heard of it. It is quite a popular book, especially a few years ago. And I did really enjoy it. It took me about a week to read it. So it is a literary fantasy, I would say, book published in 2020. And we follow this guy named Piranesi who lives in a very peculiar house. The house is very, very big, and it has thousands and thousands of rooms and halls and chambers. And all of the walls of the chambers are covered with huge statues.
Wow.
Statues of everything. Statues of people, animals, of nature. So it's a very fantastical and environment that we find our main character in. And the bottom levels of the house are flooded with seawater. And then the top levels of the house is filled with clouds. And Piranesi, our protagonist, calls himself a scientist, and he roams around the house, writes notes, makes observations and measurements to figure out the layout of the house, to navigate it, and also write down when the tides of the sea rise and fall. And Piranesi seems to have no idea how he came to be in this house.
Wow.
And he estimated that he's about 35 years old, and he has no memory of where he came from, or how did he go here, or whatever. And that doesn't bother him at all, not knowing, because all he cares about is learning more about the house and living in this house. And he speaks of the house in such a reverential way almost. He says, I'm a beloved child of the house, and it's my duty as an inhabitant to bear witness to the house's beauty. And curiously, every word related to the house is capitalized. So the house is spelled with a capital H. House's beauty is spelled with a capital B.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can immediately see the religious undertone underneath it, right? So that was super interesting.
It's like when you try to spell God, you don't spell the
Exactly.
G-O-D. You spell with the dash in the middle. Is that how you do it?
Dash in the middle?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
No. I thought you just meant capital G.
No. Like when people have the utmost reverence, they don't spell the O in the middle. It's like a sacrilegious to mention the full name. It's like the he who shall not be named.
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. And there's only one other person in the house other than Piranesi. And that person's name is the other.
Wow.
Yeah, so Piranesi and the other are in the house.
It's like a mom saying, "Oh, I have two kids. I love them both equally."
Yeah, I have this first kid and the other one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other is this older man, and he and Piranesi meet twice a week to discuss the new findings around the house. And we don't really know a lot about the other, except it seems that he's also really interested in finding out more about the house. Okay. So the story, a large chunk of the first section of the story is about the description, the setting, describing the house. And then the inciting incident, I guess, comes quite late in the book. And that is when a third person appears to be in the house. And that third person causes a division almost. And the other is very suspicious of them. But then the third person seemed to bring news about who Piranesi really was and how he came to be in the house. But that's sort of the plot, and which I won't spoil. And I'll just say that the book really feels like it has two parts to me. One is the fantastical descriptions of the house, and the other one is the much less fantastical plot line, which has a little bit of dark academia vibes, which is very popular right now. Kind of about people pushing science and philosophy too far and ending up in a dark place, or ending up where they're not expected to be. And I guess my take on this book is that I disagree with a lot of people on Goodreads, which I mean,
I love when that happens.
I always disagree with
You always
people.
do.
So a lot of people are complaining that the first half of the book is so boring. We just read about this guy wandering aimlessly in the house. But to me, that's actually the most exciting part. And it's way more interesting than the Dark Academia plot, because I just love the way that Piranesi talks about the house. And it really makes me think of like when you have like a firm faith, whether that's religious faith or some other type of faith, that really tells you like how to live your life and how to think about your existence in the world. Because Piranesi, he's so happy. He's so content. He's just very happy to be the beloved child of the house and to bear witness to its wonders. And he doesn't want anything else.
He's not trying to figure out who he is.
No.
Wow.
He has no desire to do that at all because he already knows who he is. He is the child of the house.
Wow.
Do you think that's like a manifestation of like something like Stockholm syndrome?
Not at all. And that's a great question because, well, the victims of Stockholm syndrome know that they were trapped there, right? But Piranesi does not know that. He has total memory loss. He's just happy where he is.
And he doesn't want to leave at all.
No, at least not until the third person comes.
Okay.
Yeah. And because of the religious undertones, some people might find that icky, but I don't think so because it's done very subtly. It's not very preachy at all. It's very subtle. And what's really interesting is that when Piranesi begins to learn about his old identity, he wavers. He asks himself, do I really want to know? Do I need my old identity at all? Because I know who I am. I am the child of the house. Do I need to be this other person? And then he actually discovers some old journals from when he still had some memory left before he became Piranesi. And he's like, when I read those old journals, it's so clear that that person was an unhappy person.
I guess there is a point that I'm trying to make, which is now as a Piranesi, he only has one identity.
Yeah.
He's pure.
Yeah, exactly.
But knowing his past, it introduces a conflicting identity.
Exactly.
It introduces pain.
That's exactly what it's about. To me, that was the most interesting part of the book, right? And the other thing is that the book also talks about when you're trying to understand the world, when it becomes an obsessive search for knowledge, that actually blinds you and makes you blind to the world. So you actually know less when you try to find out more.
Wow.
Because the other, he hates the house. He's like, the house is just full of empty rooms, full of meaningless statues covered in bird shit. That's how he describes the house. Because he is very obsessed with finding knowledge in a way that Piranesi is not.
Cool.
So yeah, I enjoyed this book and I highly recommend it. It's a really nuanced philosophical discussion on like how to live your life and how to structure your mind, especially. Yeah.
Wait, who is it by?
Susanna Clarke.
From America?
No, she's a British author.
British,
I think.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for
that's
sharing.
it. That's it for my reading update.
It's very insightful.
Okay, so that was our reading update, and now let's move on to the conversation with our lovely guest.
Awesome. Happy to share my, I guess, reading intro. Not exactly an update, but I'm obviously a lot less well read than you guys, so I am
stop it.
choosing from a limited selection of readings. Yeah, but I think there's a point to be made in terms of rereading the best books rather than reading as much as we can. So I'm a lot more of a non-fiction reader. I've wanted to dive into fiction before, but I've sort of realized that when you read a fiction book,
Yeah.
it sort of puts you in a sort of like an imagined reality, if that makes sense. Like
Yes,
you're living
of
in
course.
a different world, and that sort of seeps into the world that we live in. Like after I finish a fiction book, it's like I'm thinking about it like for the next day or two afterwards. And at some point, it gets a bit too over the top, if that makes sense for me.
No,
So-
it doesn't make sense. Can you explain?
So I guess after I finish a really good fiction book, it's like I want to sort of enjoy that fiction book, like enjoy thinking about it. And then I get through fiction a lot faster than nonfiction, because fiction is like, you read it and you're like, shit, I wanna dive deeper. Like, this is the story, right? I want to progress.
Yeah.
Whereas the nonfiction books are like point, and then regurgitating those points again. Whereas that the fiction books bring you into this new world. But when you dive into the new world, you lose track of your own world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you sort of lose touch with it, with reality, to take it to an extreme phrase. But I've sort of tried to limit my intake of fiction books. Like, I'm a big believer that everything's okay in moderation, but nothing's okay in excess.
That's right.
I
love that quote. I love that quote.
But my fiction intake is a lot less than usual. Well, compared to you guys, at least.
It's like when I saw your bio, you said you mostly read exclusively nonfiction. I was like, you gotta be on this podcast, man. It's like you are my antithesis. Like, because I read exclusively like fiction.
Really?
Same, to be honest. I mean, I do read nonfiction, but not as much as I read fiction. Yeah.
I'm a big believer that I had this epiphany like a few years ago, but I tried to limit my time playing games on social media. I think it drags us into this fantasy world, and when we live in a fantasy world, we're not really living our own lives.
Sometimes some of us will say that the point of fiction is you don't have to live your real life.
Yeah, that's exactly why we are reading.
Isn't that a form of like
Fantasy.
escapism, though?
It is.
It is.
Dude, and I guess it's obviously personal preference, but like, how much? So it's like sort of like a spectrum in terms of fully living in our lives and then living in a fiction life.
But the thing with fictional worlds, it helps us understand the real world.
It does. And that's why it's sort of like a sliding scale balance, right?
This is not really the best crowd to argue nonfiction over fiction. But why don't you tell us why you love nonfiction?
I think nonfiction, the insights that you can gain from nonfiction are very much lived lives, if that makes sense. So things like autobiographies, for example, are reflections of someone's actual life and someone's actual thought process. And I definitely agree that fiction can teach you so much. Like when you sort of break out of the bounds of reality and introduce, like, for example, interstellar travel, right? Like Interstellar is one of my favorite movies. But once you break out of those bounds, I definitely agree you can gain insights, but we have to balance that with our own lives. Like, it's sort of like philosophy. Like, so I'm a big philosophy reader. Philosophy by itself is useless, but you need to sort of apply that philosophy into our own lives.
Totally.
And I think that nonfiction is a great balance between the two. Why I like nonfiction is because of how deeply embedded it is within our lives. It's how the things I read in nonfiction are immediately applicable to our lives. There's one point, and there's a lot of counter arguments there as well.
I see where you're getting at.
Could you let us know what are some of your favorite nonfiction books, and what are you currently reading now? Maybe.
Before that, I want to ask which one is your best autobiography?
I don't read autobiographies as much, but I rather enjoy autobiographical meditation or autobiographical reflection. And what I mean by that is, like, it's not this is my life, but rather this is something really important that I've internalized from my life, and this is how I'm going to present it to you. So one of my favorite books of all time is called The Almanack of Naval Ravikant. It's not written by Naval himself, but by this guy. He's called Eric Jorgenson. He's a great writer. But he uses tweets from Naval, and he uses that to contextualize his arguments.
Naval
Ravikant. So he's an angel investor and entrepreneur. He founded this company called AngelList, which like connects angel investors with startups. That was one of my favorite books of all time.
So he uses the tweets?
Oh yeah, Naval tweets quite a bit. And the best tweets, I think, Eric compiles and sort of uses them to present sort of like mini stories or essays. The main two themes are, firstly, wealth, and the other is happiness. I much more enjoyed the happiness aspect of it, but it's very much like Naval puts one or two tweets up, and then there's this mini essay. So like one of them is like, happiness is a choice, for example. Like that's something I'm a big supporter of. but yeah, I think those sorts of books are the most. They're very readable as well. Something with like total nonfiction is that it's a trek to read. Like I think a lot of philosophy is like that, especially like academic writing is.
Yeah, well, I recently read the book of essays by Susan Sontag. That was completely nonfiction, of course, and that was not easy to read at all. And I actually asked ChatGPT that. I asked ChatGPT, why are Susan Sontag essays so hard to read? And then ChatGPT thinks it's because she uses a lot of complicated words and she draws ideas from many different fields.
There's a great blog article by Lawrence Yeo. He's one of my favorite blog writers. He runs a blog called More to That. And he breaks down these essays about the human condition. I think one of them, which was really interesting to me, was philosophy has lost its way. That's the name of the article. And he argues, this is a paraphrase, obviously, that the point of philosophy is for us to share ideas and to consider how we live our lives, and then try to, I guess, share those ideas and have findings out of it. But philosophy and academia has become so skewed towards jargon. I think something with like reading nonfiction is that you have to count the pages until the next chapter, or because it's quite hard to read. Like the tracks are not engaging, but part of that is also like, firstly, you can sort of limit your intake a bit more. Like I can tell myself, hey, I'm gonna read a chapter, and a chapter's 20 pages, and that'll be it for today. I think a thing with fiction is like you can't really put the book down sometimes.
That's
like
right,
the books are so good that you don't want to put them down. And I think it does interfere here and there with a bit of how you're living your life, right? I think it definitely has for me in terms of like, say I'm on the bus and I'm thinking about the fiction book I'm reading. For example,
I do that all the time.
Yeah. It's a side effect of diving into the fantasy worlds.
That's
I think we all have
you
to
can't pull yourself out.
100%. And I think we have to all find our balance between how much of real life we want to live in, how much fantasy we want to live in. Like,
0% real life. Thank you very much.
I love how you said that how immediately applicable that these derivatives from the non-fictions are.
Yeah, I like what you said that as well. Yeah.
But like in comparison to the fictions, you have to sort of
think about
peer
it
through like the fantastical frame.
Yeah.
You have to dig very deep.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value in that. It depends on how you enjoy your intake.
Yeah, it really depends on what your mood in as well.
100%,
Sometimes you don't want to think too deeply.
100%,
You want to just get the answers.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of times I have a fiction book I'm reading and a non-fiction book I'm reading, and I can jump to and from. Another thing with like reading fiction is how we sort of get enveloped in these characters' worlds to the extent that like once the book finishes, we want to live with them and we want to change the events.
We're just obsessed.
Exactly. Yeah. And obsession is great, but it also needs moderation. It's sort of like
I love this
temperance.
I love how Yurui is trying to convert Achim.
I'm not gonna be converted any day. I'm a man of my beliefs, and if I were to match you with a tarot card, you're gonna be temperance. The temperance,
right?
Yeah. I love that.
I think something
free tarot reading.
By the way, I also do like free tarot readings, so feel free to hit me up.
For sure.
Licensed Poetics is branching out.
Yes.
Yeah, you remind me of the philosophy phase that I went through in high school.
You mean the self-help phase?
Not self-help, more philosophy, but definitely what you said, accessible philosophy.
Yeah.
And I do think there's huge value in that because like you don't want it full of jargon, even though that kind of academia work is very valuable. I definitely do think there needs to be more accessible writings on philosophy and even just more accessible writing in general in non-fiction form or in fiction form. Yeah. Accessibility is always a good thing. It does not really mean like shallowness. It's different.
I mean, it is your capability to make it well presented to the less knowledgeable audience.
Exactly. That's how it's different to shallowness.
Yeah. I saw something really interesting on a like favorite reading list, which is Dune. And you know that feeling when you have like one of your favorite series and then it just got so like publicly popular, and then you sort of like have mixed feelings. And then a part of you is like, oh, finally, like someone shed some light on this treasure, and then on the other side, you feel like, oh, I've,
special
like,
anymore.
all these normies, they got to discover Dune. Oh, what a shame.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's the desire for exclusivity.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you thought of Dune.
Yeah,
because
Dune by Frank Herbert.
Frank Herbert, of course, and then the movie is showing right now.
Yep.
Have you seen it?
I haven't. No.
Not even the first one.
Nah.
Oh.
I have a few thoughts on this.
Yes.
But I'll go first on the movie. So Harry Potter, I watched the movies first, and I read the book.
Yeah.
And Dune, I read the book first, and I haven't obviously watched the movie. But I think something that is interesting in fiction as well is that you paint a picture of the characters in your head, and you paint a picture of the background, and you're going through it with them.
Yes.
But when you watch it in the movie, it's sort of like, hold on, this is different to what I imagined.
This isn't what you imagined.
And that's something so special about creativity and creative works is that it's all up to our interpretations. I think Schopenhauer probably said something similar about this. Nietzsche talks about perspectivism.
Nietzsche. I went through the same exact thing in high school.
I'm still going through it though. I'm still not over Nietzsche. He's one of my favorite philosophers.
But back to Dune. I loved it. It was highly recommended to me by quite a few people. Like people I respect very much.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, this is such a trek, like 600 pages or something, and it's thick as hell.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot.
And that's just the first book, and there's 5 more.
There's a lot of underlying, I guess, political lessons in there. And I had to marinate within me for like a couple of weeks before I could pick them out.
Yeah.
I thought, like, firstly, I love the story, like, sort of that fall from grace and the fall from power, from royalty to scavengers, right? With the free
to renegades.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. I think there was a lot of commentating there. Another part was like obviously that courage thing, and sort of adapting as well to the different cultures, because there are so many different ways that we with the world in. Another thing was like arrogance and political power. I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought, I mean, firstly, it was like fiction, right? I enjoyed it. Like, it was like, I read it in 3 days. Like,
oh, wow.
It was a fat
Wait,
book.
600?
Really?
Yeah.
You
like,
read 600 books in 3 days?
Well, when we think about it, right? Like, a page a minute isn't that hard.
Oh, now we're gonna brag about your speed.
No, we can go into that later.
Okay. And then the thing with Dune is that I think it finally has reclaimed its throne. So I think it has been missing for like the last couple of decades. That I firmly believe, like Dune in the sci-fi world is like Lord of the Rings in fantasy.
I think that might be because like Star Wars and Harry Potter, got movies made out of them earlier.
You saw like all the Force from Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's just the voice. Right?
Yeah.
Don't use the voice on me. But yeah, like. It's just how Frank Herbert's genius is, how he writes this all-encompassing. It's like a encyclopedia of the world building. And then there's also something that you haven't mentioned, but I do see your point in like the power struggles, and then like the courageous attempt of the protagonist. And also there's something I want to mention is the ecology aspect of it.
I remember that. The Dr. Kynes.
Yeah.
Wait, can you explain that? I haven't read the books.
Okay, so it also shows up in the movies as well as like underlying theme.
Yeah, I've only seen the first one.
Yeah, I've also only seen the first one. And then is that this world of the sand-covered, the dune-covered world, to live in it, you have to respect its rules, right? You have to move a certain way. Otherwise, you will attract these sandworms.
Oh.
And then
yes,
the sandworms, they represent a certainty, a certain mortality, a certain death. So unless you know how to ride them. And then I believe this is something that is representative of the nature itself. So we have to have respect for the nature. Nature is
untamable. You have to respect its rules, kind of.
Yeah, like so it's also like resourceful. And it's also bountiful, but also it is like relentless. like when you incur its wrath, it's gonna devour you.
Yeah.
That is a good metaphor for, hey, like if you want to inhabit the Dune, you have to respect its rules, kind of. Can I just say, I tried reading Dune and I didn't really like the writing style.
Yeah.
So I gave up after maybe 10%.
Like the first bits are really hard to get through, but once you're in it, it's gonna just, it's mind blowing.
Actually quite liked it. I really liked the world building in the first 60 pages.
It's like you got thrown into that world like without much leading, and then it's like I'm living in this meme where it's like I watched Dune fully for its plot, and then the plot being it's all Zendaya.
Oh yeah, because you're just watching for Zendaya.
I love Zendaya. She's like the queen. Oh.
I can't wait to watch the second one.
Okay.
I've heard people say the second movie is better than the first movie.
Because that what they did was, so was it the director, was it Denis Villeneuve? Okay, welcome to another episode of mispronouncing artists' names. Denis, he did a really good job, like in terms of the cinematology and then how he brought this world to life. I think it's like a really deserving return. Because did you know that David Lynch also made a movie?
I knew there were previous adaptations, but I didn't know they were by David Lynch.
It was David Lynch.
Ah, I see.
And then it sort of didn't go well. Partly because I think at that time, I don't know what happened, but Frank Herbert at one phase of his life, he's like, oh, I hate Dune so much. I'm going to make this the worst movie of all time.
Frank Herbert said that?
Yeah.
So did he have a hand in the movie making as well? Oh.
And then he intentionally made it bad.
That is such artist bullshit. I'm here for it.
It's like, oh, my self-critique has overcame me. But yeah.
But I've heard of lots of stories like that where authors publish a book and then 10 years later they hate it.
I mean,
themselves.
these are all like speculations. And we never knew if they were true. And then I think the first 3 books are like the trilogy of Dune. And then the last 3 are co-written by his son, Daniel Herbert. Shall we move on to your more philosophical world? Tell me about your meditations.
Yeah. Like meditating? Or
No, like meditations.
Oh, the book.
Yeah.
The book. Yeah. I think
Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah. So Stoic philosophy is probably my favorite out of all of them.
Stoic?
Yeah.
Stoicism.
Yeah. I've dabbled in some of the other ones. I think Stoic is the most, I guess, applicable. I think it's part of the human condition, and it's very objective as well. It's coming from a not such a wide reader, but just from my my exploration at least, I've come to enjoy Stoic the most. If I had to sum up all of Stoic philosophy in one sentence, it would be to live in conformity with nature. So a part of it is dealing with people. Everyone's going to be different. Some people will wrong you, some people will be good to you. It's all part of nature. Another one is death. We're all going to die, and we have to deal with that, and that's a part of nature. A quote is amor fati, love your fate. That's a big one.
Amor fati?
Yeah,
That's Latin, right?
Latin.
Yeah.
All of these concepts are about trying to find some calm within calamity. And
I love that.
And try to, I guess, find peace within the world.
I love how you interpret it as not just the natural world, but human nature as well. Because you said that live conformity with nature. One way of doing that is accepting that people are going to be different to you. That's sort of human nature, right? Not nature.
Like sociology.
Yeah. I think something I've thought about a lot is that accept that, things aren't always going to go your way. And people aren't always going to act the way that you want them to. I think a part of that in terms of meeting people and in sort of the business world is trying to find out what experiences shape them and using that to understand the cognitive biases that they're going to have, and using that as a means to, I guess, empathize with them a bit more. So something I really like doing before my coffee chats is trying to do a bit of diligence into I guess what sort of person they are, and
Yeah, I'm really curious. How did you find your way into the business world, and why are you interested in it?
Yeah. Where do I start? I think it was year 9. It was middle of COVID, and I taught myself how to code. And me and a couple of mates, we made a website for high schoolers that we scaled to a few thousand users.
Wow.
Later down the line in high school, I met some really cool people. Who
Within
taught
your
me a
school
ton.
or from other schools?
No, outside.
Okay.
One of these guys, Chris, I met through Reddit. Actually, it was like some career advice for him, and it was like him going, "Hey, I'm a doctor. Which I did CS or finance instead." And then I was like, "Hey, that's interesting. Like I was looking into all 3 of those fields. Like this guy seems interesting. Like I should talk to him." He sort of became like a figure of guidance and mentorship for the past couple of years now. Another guy, Max Marchioni, is someone I met through his blog as well. I reached out to him for a coffee, and it was virtual and everything, and we've gotten along quite well for the past year or so, and he's helped me a lot as well. But yeah, it was really these guys who are, happy to give their time to a 15, 16-year-old.
I see.
Who was just curious. And
also, I love how like inquisitive or daring you are just to punching your way into that world.
I think it was more just curiosity. Like it sort of, it was harder for me to not do it than to do it. I think a framework I really like is regret minimization.
Yeah.
Say again?
Regret minimization.
Regret minimization.
And sort of looking back, sort of projecting ourselves forward into life and looking back and sort of thinking, if I was like 80 and I looked back at myself now, would I regret doing the thing or would I regret not doing the thing? And then using that as a guidance.
It's a quite a leap for you to imagine yourself at 80. I mean, you're not even 18 yet.
It's more of a conceptual, like a big picture.
I want to say that since you mentioned stoicism, there's something that I learned just very recently is that I guess I'm just in terms of practicing self-compassion is that I'm more like stable in terms of my core. That if I see like just take me like half a year back, if I see someone like you like so early, in such an early age with all these achievements, I would just feel so like humiliated, like mortified.
Oh, if you're jealous,
no, it's like what did I do when I was 17, right? But now I just feel like people say that a lot, like you're ahead of your time, but in reality, you can't really be ahead of your time. You're always in your time.
At your time.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's a big thing, I think, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I think
like when you say you're ahead of your time, you're not really comparing to yourself. You're comparing to your peers, to comparing others. Yeah.
Well, I've a lot of very intelligent friends I met during high school, and I compared myself to them a lot.
Yeah.
And it was around end of year 11 that I realized that we're running our own races.
Yeah.
A great Stoic quote is I think it's from Marcus Aurelius, but it's like be hard on yourself but soft on others.
Wow.
And
that sounds like him.
Yeah. And I think
sounds like my friend Marcus Aurelius.
No, it's like the point of Marcus Aurelius is that I think he is one of the last like good emperors. So he is so, I guess, humble, and then he just like, I'm not trying to do anything great. I'm just journaling and just put a quote here and there. And it somehow ended up being the greatest philosophy book of all time. It's been like that for centuries, and it's gonna be like
it was never meant to be published.
No,
like it was his private sort of dictation.
Exactly.
He hired a slave to walk around with him, and whenever he was like feeling mighty, like in front of a crowd or something, he got the slave to whisper in his ear, "You're just a man." And I think that's so. It was an attempt to humble him.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fun.
Oh, some men out there need to be told that real bad.
When you have the God syndrome, I believe it was in Sandman, the audiobook, that he exactly like you said, that he hired someone. I think it was one of his like advisors, like courtiers, and they just pretend like they put on like really shaggy clothes and then they pretend to be beggars on the street for a day, and just really to humble themselves. Yeah.
Oh, I have a follow-up on that actually. It's to do with the high school experience that you mentioned. I guess coming straight out of it, what do you think of the way that reading and writing and English is taught in high school?
Oh, I have a good opinion on this.
I'm so keen to hear it.
I am half
Spicy
a year.
opinion.
I am half a year out now, so I've had a bit of time to reflect. I really liked English class. My teacher, it was great. She was a very, very nice teacher. She facilitated the best intellectual discussions. But I really liked reading a book and then having my own interpretation and then listening to other people's interpretations of it in class. And when she posed a question, it was very conceptual. It was like, what do we think of this? And then we could have debates in the class, and we could have tangents. And one of the exercises was this hexagon exercise. And when we studied 1984, this was right after our trials. But basically, what she did, she got a whiteboard, and she put ideas up there, and then we could get hexagons and sort of match these ideas. And it was like a point-based system. Like the more matches you get,
why does it have to be a hexagon?
Oh, just 6 sides, 6 connections, six
right.
Sort of things. And it's sort of like, it was like a big image and like everything formed together. And one of my best memories from there was my table group with all my boys. We argued to the bone for all of these connections, and it was great to have that intense sort of passionate debate.
Yeah, sounds great.
I really liked the classes. I didn't really like the exams. Well, it's an exam, right? You do what's conventional to get high marks. You write an essay in your spare time. You have it reviewed by friends, teachers, whoever it is. You get a good essay. Then you memorize it and you write it down in the exam.
Yeah.
So it's very, very
Like rigid, like structure.
yes.
Yeah.
It's very like this, and less creative expression of freeform thought.
So that, like the creativity mostly comes from the classes.
I think so. I think so.
I see.
And it's really like subject to the individual teachers, I guess.
So if you could change the way English is taught in high school, how would you do it?
Most ideally, I'd put it on a focus of nuanced thought and
Remove the exam.
yes, I would do that. The problem is sort of the resource allocation. I think there's this in 4-unit English, in Extension 2 English, my friends were telling me about Viva Voce, like you speak, it's an oral exam, and you have to answer questions that are they're customized to your
Is that for Extension
presentation.
English?
Extension 2.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought that was really interesting because you could sort of justify it, right? And it's a bit more holistic, but it's very hard to do that because of the
And on the spot, right? You don't know what question you're going to get.
Exactly.
That's how they prevent you from cheating and memorizing an essay beforehand.
It sort of resembles the structure of a like uni thesis presentation, don't you
or
think?
debate even. A thesis presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very hard to game those.
Yeah.
Like you can't just memorize your way out of it.
Exactly.
Right? I think that'll be great.
But yeah, like I think hats off to all these amazing teachers. You know, they're inspiring the young creatives.
Shout out Miss Bertram from Roots.
I've heard a lot of people say my high school English class made me read this book and that made me hate it because we overanalyzed it. I guess you don't feel that way about 1984?
Oh no, I thought 1984 was a great book.
Okay, that's fantastic to hear.
I thought it was so profound of a book that we could really dive in, and it was fun to dive in. It was very, very fun to dive in.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear because so many people say that high school made them hate reading. Yeah,
I think a
what
part
shame.
of that is that some of the connections are contrived. But yeah, there were some texts like in English that like I did enjoy a bit less because we were getting so deep, and I just wanted it to be over. I think a text that I thought we shouldn't have done is John Donne's poems. If you've heard of them,
I've heard of them. I haven't read them though.
Yeah, they're very they're a lot more
very
short.
obscure.
Yeah, well, they're obscure and they're short. So we had like 20-minute long discussions. Oh, not 20 minutes. That's a bit of an exaggeration.
On like 4 lines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love those.
And I think that's why people disliked it a bit more. It's like, oh my god, it's 4 lines. Hurry up! But 1984 is a big novel, right? And there are macro.
There's so much depth to it.
Exactly. I wouldn't mind going back to English. Like a lot of people hated English in high school, but I didn't mind it. I found it better than some other subjects, which I won't mention.
Yeah, but like, don't take this the wrong way. I don't miss being 17.
No.
I hated being.
I was
17.
so emo. I was so brooding. At
Right?
That time.
Like looking back, I just feel so cringe.
Yeah, like even when I read my writing, but sometimes when I have coffee chats, people read my website first, and then I'm like, and then they quote it back to me, and I'm like, wait, I wrote that. And it's good and bad. Like some of them are like, holy crap, that's really insightful. But then the other, they usually quote the insightful side. But then when I read the article again, I'm like, why did I write that?
Oh no!
But I'm never going to edit them.
I think also something goes into like publishing it online, like putting it out there. Sometimes it gives you the impetus of like improving yourself. Because if you just write behind closed doors, and then you would never know. Like, because writing is all about, it's not about right or wrong, it's about which way I can do it better, right? And then if you just do it behind closed doors, you would never know.
That's why it's sort of public accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember how in our writing group, when you first read your writing out loud to a room, how scary and how different it is to just writing behind doors?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Okay.
That's it for today. I hope you guys had fun, as much fun as we did recording it. And
thank you again to our guest.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. No, it was a great
Yurui
experience.
for coming. Yeah, it was a really good conversation. And thank you for listening to Lessons Poetics. I'm your host, Achim.
And I'm your host, Fan Ling.
See you again next time.
Bye.
Ooh.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Yurui is a 19-year-old high school grad.
17. That's going in.
All right.